Welcome to this meeting of the Mid Suffolk District Council Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Lavinia Haddingham and I'll be chairing this committee. May I first remind you of some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use. Please do not interrupt other speakers or hold separate conversations whilst others are speaking. If you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones are switched off or onto silent and your laptops are switched to silent. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be recorded except where they are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the council to have consented to being recorded. By entering the meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the council and to the possible use of the sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The council, members of the public and the press may record, film or photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. If you intend to do so, could you please inform the committee clerk? If you hear the fire alarm, leave the building immediately via fire exit and make your way to the assembly point at the Ipswich football ground. Follow the signs directing you to the fire exits and do not re-enter the building unless told it is safe to do so. So I'll do some introductions. First we have the Area Planning Manager, Gemma Walker, the Legal Advisor, Ian Dupre, and the Case Officers, Bradley Heffer and Nikita Goodrich, and the Governance Officers, Claire Philpott, Mandy Smith, and Alicia Norman. So I'll move to the agenda then, thank you. Agenda item number 1, apologies for absence and substitutions. Do we have any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Mansell and Councillor Matheson as substituting, and Councillor Patcher and Councillor Davies as substituting. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, to receive declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest and other registrable or non-registrable interest by members. Is there any other interest to declare? Good stuff. Item number 3, declarations of lobbying. Are there any to declare? Just you, Councillor Matheson?
Do 7A.
7A, okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? Stuff. Declarations of personal site visits. Are there any to declare? Stuff. So item number 5, confirmation of the minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on June the 5th. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? Could I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor Walboys. And a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. The Governance Officer will now conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. That's 5 votes for and 3 abstentions. Thank you.
Thank you. The minutes will be confirmed and signed later. Item number 6, to receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received.
Thank you. Item number 7, MLP/24/02, schedule of planning applications. So the first one is the land northwest of Stow Upland Road, Stowmarket, Suffolk. I will now invite the Case Officer, Bradley Heffer, to introduce the application to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. The first application on today's agenda is submitted under Section 73 of the Town and Country Planning Act and seeks permission to remove a condition that was attached to full planning permission for residential development on a site located northwest of Stow Upland Road, Stowmarket. The subject site is located to the northwest of the town and is bounded to the north by the A14 and to the south-east by Stow Upland Road. On this plan you can also note the site's geographical location in relation to the remainder of the town and the settlement of Stow Upland to the northeast. Under Planning Permission 21 03287, full planning permission has been granted for the provision of 258 units on the site, with new public open space, landscaping, access and associated infrastructure. The site forms part of a larger site, including this land here, which is separately known as Ashes Farm, which has previously been identified as suitable for residential development. The land that you can see to the left has the benefit of outline planning permission. This site shows the extent of the site for which the planning permission has been granted, edged red, and also members will note the presence of a collection of buildings within the site which is comprised redundant chicken sheds here, which are assumed to have been since removed. This constraints plan shows the site in relation to the settlement boundary for Stowmarket, as shown on the brown line, or via the brown line. So that's the edge of the existing settlement boundary. Also, public rights of way are shown, which are shown the green dotted line. You'll see that one does go within the site itself, it's contained partly within the site. And also there are some listed buildings in the vicinity of the site which are shown orange, unfortunately not coming out very well on the plan. Under the planning permission, this shows the approved layout that was approved in 2021. Generally, you'll note that the development consists of a series of perimeter blocks, open space, and in this corner here, a SUDS attenuation basin to serve the approved SUDS scheme for the site. SUDS being wholly feasible because there is a fall from this side to this side, and if you've ever driven down the road you'll be aware of that, so that the gravity is there to be used. The other element you can see here, which is key to the development of the overall site, is the provision of a spine road link that links up with Stowmarket Road, goes through the site here, and will continue through the Ashes Farm site and onto Newton Road, which is off the plan. So that provision is secured as part of the permission for this site and the outline permission for the site next door. I've included this slide because it's pertinent, I think, to what we're going to talk about today. We've approved, as part of the planning permission that was granted on the site, we agreed a phasing plan, and this is the plan that was approved. In general terms, as you can see, this area here, well, as you can see, I'll advise you, this area here is the first phase of development overall, and the green area is the second phase of development overall. The blue lines indicated on the plan in individual numbered areas, you can't actually see them here, but they indicate the direction of construction. So, for example, in that section of development there, the construction would follow that line. And again, when you get to the next little group, it will follow those arrows there. I think just to avoid any confusion, so you thought, what on earth is that slide showing me? This is the condition that you're being asked to look at today. This condition was not included in the officer's report. It wasn't recommended by officers, but following debate at the planning committee, was requested by committee and reflects the request that was made at committee. I will take the time to run through it just so that we're all clear exactly what it says. Notwithstanding the details shown on the approved plans, all dwellings within the development shall include air source heat pump installations as a paid-for option for purchasers at initial sale stage. The developer shall maintain a register of installation requests for each dwelling plot as it becomes available for occupation, and the register shall be made available for inspection by the local planning authority upon request. And you can see the reason why that has been imposed as well. So, in summary, as I've said in my my report, what in effect that secures is a situation where the initial purchasers of each dwelling across the entire site would be offered the option, and they would have to pay for it, for the installation of an air source heat pump. That was agreed and that's been imposed. The developer, the applicant, has since decided to challenge that condition, considering that it doesn't actually meet the terms of PPG, the planning practice guidance, in terms of the advice that we have to take into, well, the guidance we have to take into account when we draft conditions. And I'll quickly read to you what paragraph 56 of the MPPF says, so just so you're aware of that, because it's referred to in the applicant's material. Planning conditions should be kept to a minimum and only imposed where they are necessary, relevant to planning and to the development to be permitted, enforceable, precise and reasonable in all other respects. Agreeing conditions early is beneficial to all parties involved in the process and can speed up decision making. So the situation you're being asked to consider is whether it's acceptable. You're not being asked to reconsider the acceptability of the development in total. What you're being asked to consider is that if the development is acceptable without that condition in place. The reason that we think that condition can be satisfactorily taken off of the decision notice is that condition 41 that was imposed on the planning permission requires us to approve a sustainability and energy strategy. Since this application has been in, this application we're talking about today, the applicant has confirmed to us that air source heat pumps, in the strategy for condition 41, that air source heat pumps will be used on approximately half of the dwellings. And that reflects the requirements of the future home standard, which are coming in next year and are widely anticipated to require air source heat pumps as standard. So in anticipation of that happening, it's reflected in the material we've got for condition 41 that air source heat pumps will be going in on, it says, I think, at least 50% of the dwellings. Subsequent to the submission of this application, the applicant, as I've said, as you see in my report, I think it's pages 22 and 23, has firmed up on that and has specifically identified now that dwellings on plots, if I go back to, I mean, you won't be able to read the numbers unfortunately, but dwellings on plots 1 to 97, 145 to 160 and 253 to 258 would be built to the current building regulations. In other words, they would be built to a situation where they have boilers, gas boilers, and PV on the roofs. And the subsequent dwellings, plots 98 to 144 and 161 to 252, would be built with air source heat pumps in anticipation of the future home standard. So that clarification has been made, and we as officers feel that as that clarification has been made, there is no reason why we couldn't actually include that or get that to be included within the strategy, which we would have to approve under condition 41. So there will be a certainty that there will be, we as an authority can then say that this number of units will not have air source heat pumps, but this number of units would. The number of units that would have air source heat pumps exceeds the number that wouldn't. I think that's another important point. I think that the applicant has estimated 46% of the total would be boilers and PV, and 54% would be air source heat pumps and PV. And overall, the saving, this is overall both phases, has been estimated to exceed, I think it's 40% over what the requirement would be. So on the basis of that, we're happy to support the recommendation, because as I think the condition as it's, sorry, we're happy to support the removal, because as you can see with the condition, which would bite across the entire site, pre and post the future home standard, the provision of air source heat pumps would be an opt-in by the purchaser, the initial purchaser at that. So there is no certainty. I mean, it is a way of getting some air source heat pumps, but I think that that's why we're taking it, we're bringing it to a positive recommendation, because there is certainty offered by discharging condition 41 on the basis of the information we've got from the developer now. So I hope that's made some sense. I'll just quickly show you some photographs. These are taken from Stowmarket Road, and as you can see, the site development has been implemented. The access you can see there is actually a temporary access. The main access to serve the site is further down the hill, and this access here has been approved in order that the main access can be constructed. Once that main access is constructed, that access there would have to be shut anyway. So I think that there's not much, sorry, that's the gap there where the main access is going in. I think that's as much as I need to say now, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the case officer? Councillor Madsen.
Yeah, I'd like to ask officers and the chair, really, the key difficulty that I have with all of this is about the because I was on the committee in 2022 when we originally approved this, and it's the intentions of the committee and the drafting of the condition. And so really my question is, at what point in the meeting process shall we discuss those points?
What do you mean, sorry, point?
If I may, Madam Chair, I think if probably later, I think the purpose of now is to ask questions of the case officer as to the facts and of what he presented.
So, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. One statement and one question, I guess. Confirming 54% of these properties, when they're built, will have heat pumps installed at the developer's expense. Is that correct?
Sorry, yes, that is correct, Councillor. Yep.
Thank you, Officer. And for the other 46%, can those residents opt to have heat pumps if they so wish?
If you remove the condition, the option wouldn't be there. It wouldn't be a paid-for option anymore. They could seek to retrofit, but it wouldn't be something that we could. Well, I mean, the option is just an option anyway. It's not a must-have. So I think that, but it wouldn't be there in any event. So the removal of the condition would mean that there would be, I assume that all those dwellings up until that point would be built with gas boilers and PV on roofs.
Come back.
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. So, as a committee, could we find a way of conditioning that those 46% folks could have the option, if they so wish at their expense, to have the developer allow heat pumps rather than gas boilers?
I think that would mean that the wording of the condition 40 would have to refer to the first phase of development. Well, actually, it would have to refer to the plots that have been identified by the developer as just having gas boilers at this stage. So I think, just thinking aloud, what you're probably, a situation you're probably asking is if could we still get the paid for option on phase 1? I think we'd have to possibly revise the terms of the condition to do that. I'm happy to take advice, but I suspect that because the condition has been challenged in its entirety, the fact that it wouldn't be, or it would be phased, would mean that the developer wouldn't be accepting that condition either, albeit it's just to the first phase. That would be my view on it.
Councillor Warboys.
Thank you, Chair. So, a bit of point of clarity. This paragraph 56 on the NPPF, that planning conditions should be kept to a minimum. They should be enforceable, precise and reasonable. There's a little footnote on it, which, to be honest, I didn't quite understand. I'll quote it. Sections 100ZA 4 to 6, Town and Country Planning Act, and it talks about having a written agreement, and I wonder if that applies in this case. Did we have a written agreement?
Yeah, it's something we're familiar with. It's a particular statutory rule, and I always misquote it, so I'm going to look it up. Sorry if you'll bear with us, Chair. I don't think it worries us in this case. It's, just tell me again, Councillor, 100, section 100Z. I do know the one you mean. I just need to get the wording right.
It's paragraph 40. Yes, paragraph 56.
I've got it. Yeah. That is the rule that the planning, the legislative provision that says the Secretary of State may bear regulations provide, and the Secretary of State has done that certain. It's about pre-commencement conditions, isn't it, Gemma? Yeah. You probably know
I haven't got the wording, but I was just going to say that in. I think it's about pre-commencement conditions. So if we say prior to commencement of development, the developer must submit the materials for approval by the planning officer, we have to go and seek the, thanks, it's gone, Brad. We have to go and seek their agreement. We give them a 10-day, I think it is, period. If they come back in the 10 days, we might negotiate over it. If we don't get any response, we're free to put that condition on. It was a bit of, at the time, where planning was seen as being a bit of a blocker to development. So by trying to negotiate away pre-commencement conditions, that was part of it. Thanks. I've just, having a nightmare, Brad.
Is that footnote there?
Yeah, so that's written agreement to the terms of a pre-commencement condition. So yeah, that doesn't apply for that one. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Penny, do you have a question?
I think Councillor Davis covered my points, although I could ask what proportion of the properties with air source heat pumps will be affordable homes?
Sorry, I'll just get the relevant plan up. It's been difficult to see this, Councillor, and I apologise, but the first phase of development, which was shown on that phasing plan, on this one, that's the first phase of development, sort of flesh-coloured phase there. There's a number of affordable housing units which have got red dots on them and blue dots on them shown in there. The second phase has got a number of affordable housing units which has got the same annotation there. I haven't done the proportion, but there's 91 units overall. So I think it's fair to say that half of them, well, say the affordable housing provision has been spread across the site rather than grouped in one particular location, and therefore some of them will have the gas boiler PV option, or sorry, the construction, and some will have air source heat pumps, but I can't tell you exactly what the proportion is, unfortunately.
Councillor Hardingham.
Thank you, Chair. As I understand it, the second phase will be built after the Future Homes Standard comes into force, and that those houses would be obliged under Future Homes Standard almost certainly to install air source heat pumps on all the properties. Is that correct?
It's all I can advise at this stage. My understanding is anticipated that will be the case. We won't know for certain until the publication of the standard.
So in that case, the developer is not making any concession in this instance towards combating climate change. In other words, they're doing the bare minimum.
Yeah, perhaps Brad and I might just need to do this between us. So my understanding is they've got building regs in place under the current building regs, which means they don't have to get new updated building regs for future homes, technically. So we could be in a case of gas boilers with air source heat pumps on request per the current condition, or we can say, okay, half don't have air source heat pumps, we've got gas boilers. Whether we could ask the question of the developer whether they'd be happy to retain an option on that first half might be something you want to ask them in due course, and then the second half would have air source heat pumps. So I think that was the feeling, and hopefully Brad agrees that was the conversation we had with Paul Hughes from Building Control yesterday.
Right. Thank you. That's helpful.
Councillor Elkin.
Thank you, Chair. My understanding is that the Future Home Standards is coming in next year, but it's not decided yet whether the sort of grace period, how long that's going to be, and I think it might be 6 months or it might be 12 months, but nobody knows yet. Does that have any implication at all if this is agreed by condition that the phase 2 is going to have air source heat pumps? Does that happen regardless of when the Future Home Standards come in? Are they sort of not tied together, if you see what I mean?
Thank you, Councillor. I think the reason we're happy to bring this to positive recommendation is that until the Future Home Standard is with us as a set piece of requirement and legislation, we don't know exactly what will be required, whether it will change between now and it coming in. And the option that you're being presented with today via the strengthening of information on condition 41 is that you will know for certainty that which particular dwellings on that development will have air source heat pumps regardless. So I think that is the benefit we see now in giving you the recommendation that we've given you, if that answers the question.
Councillor Matheson.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought we know what the Future Home Standard building regs will be, and it's just a question of that they won't be in force until June 2025, but that the detail of the individual houses is determined at the point at which we put in the footings. At that stage, the building regs apply at that point, and the assumption about this development is that phase 2 will fall into that time slot after then, so that and then they all have to have air source heat pumps after that point. in order to be able to achieve the building reg standard. Now, is that correct, my understanding?
I think that the requirements, whatever the requirements are, the future home standard is what they would have to build under as soon as those are brought in.
Don't we know what they are, though?
Well, I say that's why I'm being cautious about that, because I can't say with any certainty because I don't know, because they haven't been published. I know a lot of people understand what they were likely to incorporate, but until they're actually published, I can't say with any certainty to committee that this will definitely happen. That's the situation that I think we have to take into account or factor in as part of this.
Also, Chair, my understanding, I discussed how building regs come into force with our building control manager 2 or 3 years ago now, I suppose, and they are firmed up with 12 months' notice so that the industry can get ready to achieving them. You know, so that we do know exactly what they are, don't we, already?
I'd say you probably undoubtedly know more about what's going to happen than I do in this case, because I've just looked at it in terms of legislation that's going to come in well, not imminently, but in the medium future. Yeah.
Well, perhaps just a bit more on that. So that was what I was trying to get at with the point of the fact that they have done their building regs. So they've got building regs in place. Which is what I was saying, that was the conversation via Paul Hughes yesterday.
Yeah.
They've got their building regs in place. So having done that, we're in a different position. We're in the position we've got building regs in place. So what does or doesn't happen with future home standards is something that seems unlikely to apply because we've got building regs in place. But again, perhaps we might get some more detail on that from the developer. It might be something we can submit to. I thought so. Yeah.
Councillor Lawrence.
Environmental health, thank you, Chair. I'm only up from the Environmental Health Department, but I'm a little bit intrigued by that officer's support for the removal of this condition, because their use would require individual noise impact assessments, as inappropriate use may result in noise nuisance. So is that suggesting that this 54% of properties which will have, which are now guaranteed or will be accepted, these heat pumps could actually be a noise nuisance, and the 54% of properties that they will be fitted to?
Thank you, Councillor. The comment we've received from Environmental Health Officer refers to potential noise nuisance arising from the pumps. I think in terms of how that would be managed in this particular development, and I should have added that to the report, but we've got a condition in the full planning permission which requires dwellings to have internal insulation standards that are signed off that accord with the regulations. So there is a safeguard in place to ensure that, you know, there's no particular noise issue that would cause disturbance for the residents in those particular dwellings. Clearly, if it's a requirement of building regulations in the future that air source heat pumps are standard, then the construction, I would anticipate the construction of the dwelling would have to reflect that in any event, in order that there isn't an issue, because clearly if there was a lot of air source heat pumps being provided and collectively they created a noise issue that was unacceptable, it just wouldn't work. So therefore I think that in terms of the future home standard, it would anticipate that in any event. I think what my colleague may have been alluding to was that if you bought a house and then decided you wanted to install an air source heat pump and it required planning permission, what's likely to happen in that scenario is that as part of your application submission, you would need to put in some sort of noise statement to anticipate the impact that would happen around or to residents around surrounding the application site.
Are there any other questions for the case officer? Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, I'm really struggling with it, with how building regulations are applied, because again my understanding was that they apply at the point that you start building the house, but officers just said that the building regs are in place for the whole site, but I don't understand. That doesn't tally with my understanding of how they work. And I'd really like to, because I think that's quite important to where we're trying to get to and what the original intentions were and everything. I don't know whether we can get any extra help on that or something.
I'm happy to just perhaps get in touch and get some further advice on it. But again, it might be something if we can perhaps proceed and see if the applicant has got any points that they've got about where they're at with their particular site. And there, I think that might be helpful. And I'll see what I can just confirm in the meantime, if that's all right.
Are you happy with that, John? If she sort of asks some questions and we continue, or would you rather have a break? Or can we continue with the public speakers and then come back to it?
We get to a firm understanding of how that works before we get to making a decision.
I hear what you're saying.
Preferably before we start debating, ideally.
Yes.
Thank you.
So are there any other questions at present? Councillor Warborn.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just to make it quite clear, building regulations are a minimum requirement. There's nothing to prevent a developer exceeding those requirements.
No.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Right, so we'll move on to the public speakers to address the committee. We have no one from the parish council. We don't have any objectors or supporters, but we do have the agent, Michael Smith. Would you like to put your thing on? Well done, and I'll give you, you've got 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and on behalf of the applicant, thank you for the opportunity to address the committee this morning. This application has been presented to you to remove the condition that offers air source heat pumps as an optional extra, but it shouldn't be reviewed as a developer trying to avoid their responsibilities. In fact, the proposed change to condition 40 on the Planning Permission reflects the energy and sustainability strategy that has been submitted to address condition 41, with the end result being a delivery of more new homes with air source heat pumps and a reduction in carbon dioxide emissions from the site. Let's take a step back and look at condition 40, which requires air source heat pumps to be offered as a paid-for optional extra when the buildings are sold. The heating and hot water system for a gas boiler is completely different to the system that would be used with an air source heat pump, meaning that adding the optional extra is not a cheap choice and it isn't as simple as swapping a boiler for a heat pump. It also requires the internal pipework, water storage and radiators to be changed. The option for an air source heat pump has been offered to all potential customers, but so far no one has chosen to have one installed. Furthermore, the same option is also being offered at Crest Nicholson site at the Ipswich Garden suburb, and no one has chosen to add the optional extra air source heat pump at that site as well. At present, the combination of gas boilers and photovoltaic panels delivers a 32% reduction in carbon emissions when compared to the baseline set by the 2013 building regulations. That's a reasonable improvement, but it seems that customers do not place value on achieving greater reduction and are unwilling to pay to go further. The applicant is complying with the condition, but the condition isn't delivering a greater level of sustainable development. Instead, the energy and sustainability strategy for condition 41 has been updated to reflect the forthcoming introduction of the future home standards. The first half of the scheme continued to be delivered with gas boilers and photovoltaic panels, as you've heard, and the second half swapping to air source heat pumps with the same photovoltaic panels. The saving in carbon emissions is substantial. For a large house, measured against the 2021 building regulations, the emissions are cut by 67%, smaller houses reach 75% reduction. As such, the need for air source heat pumps to be delivered as an optional extra is removed, and they will be fitted as standard in the second half of the scheme, making the condition redundant. In fact, offering a choice hasn't made the scheme more sustainable, and taking away that choice is a straightforward route to reducing carbon emissions from the new homes, substantially enhancing the sustainability credentials of the site. As an aside, condition 40 doesn't apply to the affordable housing, but the change to the energy and sustainability strategy in condition 41 also picks up the plots that aren't for sale on the open market and guarantees that 139 of the 258 homes will be equipped with air source heat pumps. To conclude, condition 40 isn't delivering anything. The energy and sustainability strategy in condition 41 imposes the use of air source heat pumps in the second half of the scheme, meaning that condition 40 is no longer needed and should be omitted from the decision notice so that a better level of sustainability can be delivered. Your case officer recommends approval on the grounds that the change captures air source heat pumps for more than half the scheme. Therefore, I trust you will concur and resolve to approve the change.
Yes, I can see the newspaper headline now. Crest Nicholson Homes not future-proof. Why would you not want to future-proof nearly half of your properties?
It's not a question of the homes not being future-proofed. It's a question of customers aren't interested in adding the air source heat pump. The condition is there. It's offered to anyone who comes in to look at purchasing a new home. So far, no one has picked it up. And I used the example of the site at Henley Gate, Ipswich Garden suburb. No one seems to be willing to do it there. I couldn't tell you if it's the public aren't interested, if the cost is too great, but the problem with Condition 40 is it's just not delivering anything. It's not that Crest don't want to do it, it's that no one's taken up the option and it's making the condition redundant.
Yeah, I meant why would you not want to also put air source heat pumps in the other 119 properties?
You've seen the work has started. There was a question about building regulations earlier, and the simple fact is construction is underway on the first half of the site. So it's being built to the current building regulations. There is no requirement to add the air source heat pumps, and indeed this committee added the condition to let people have the optional extra. Crest Nicholson are built in accordance with the current regulations. The idea of the change to Condition 41 and the energy and sustainability strategy is to do exactly what you're saying. Let's future-proof it, let's get ahead of the new standards, let's move on to the new standard for half of the scheme, rather than build out under the old regulations.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. This may feel like we're going in a circle, but if we agree to go for this option and accept the officer's advice, are you prepared to, in the initial sales phase, offer the 46% who should have gas boilers the option, if they wish to, pay for it themselves, of air source heat pumps?
The difficulty we have is the condition offers something that people don't want, and what we want to do is move on to a different standard that does better. So I see no point in keeping it. In planning terms, it's doing nothing. It's a pointless condition that's going nowhere. We can do better if we guarantee the whole site is built under, guarantee the second half of the site is built under the new regulations. We change the working drawings, change the construction programme, and deliver what should be delivered. But we're in transition, that's the problem. The current building regulations don't force it. The site's being built. This is a chance to pick up the second half.
My apologies. Sorry, I'm coming back to you, but obviously I didn't phrase my initial question correctly, so I confused you. If we assume that the decision is taken to accept the recommendation as put forward, that means that 46% of people will automatically have gas boilers. What I'm asking you is, if one of those 46% is willing to pay for air source heat pumps, are you open to that as a possibility as someone looking to provide customer service to new home purchasers?
I mean, that's no different to Condition 40 as it stands, and nobody has any interest in it. Also, the affordable housing in the first phase doesn't include it. It's not in the contract with the registered provider. It's possible someone could come along and ask to add it, but the experience so far is nobody has. It seems a waste of time, and indeed if we don't change it, then the second half of the scheme delivers nothing as well. I can't guarantee someone's not going to walk into the sales area this afternoon and ask for an air source heat pump, but the site's been on sale for 6 months, absolutely nothing's happened, it's delivering nothing. We think if we change it around, we can do much, much better.
Councillor Elkin.
Thank you, Chair. Just for my interest, really, sort of how much does it cost for your customers to have an air source heat pump added, if that's something you're happy to share? How much is the uplift? And I was also curious what the install difference is in cost between putting air source heat pumps in now versus gas boilers in now, because obviously air source heat pumps are quite expensive to retrofit. So yeah, that's my question.
I can't give you a straight answer, councillor, because it changes from house to house. As you can imagine, the smaller houses and the bigger houses, different number of radiators, different number of bathrooms. But it's about £20,000. A gas boiler with photovoltaic panels is considerably cheaper. Technology is maturing, and that's why Chris Nicholson are willing on the second phase to swap over, because the price of an individual air source heat pump is coming down as more and more people adopt them.
So that probably points to, may I come back, Chair? Thank you. Points to why there hasn't been a lot of, it's not lack of interest, it's cost. So my second point was, as from the buildings, construction side of things, roughly, what is the cost implication of installing air source heat pumps sort of at build stage compared to installing gas at build stage?
At build stage, it's much less. This is why Chris Nicholson are asking to change the condition and with condition 41 get some certainty, so they know that 139 of the dwellings will have the air source heat pump, so they can order 139 air source heat pumps rather than one every time one's needed. So yes, there is a cost difference, and to an extent that's the cost of doing business. The building regulations will change in the future. It's not certain when or how, but there will be a cost, and that will be passed on to the customers. But as an individual item, pursuant to condition 40 as it stands, it's a really expensive thing to do, because you don't just change a boiler to an air source heat pump. You have to change all the pipe work, you need different radiators, you need a different way of storing the hot water that's been made. It's almost a different heating system. It changes the interior of the house in a considerable way.
Councillor Masterson.
Thank you. Yeah, there's two questions, well, three questions really. I mean, one is a comment. I'm astonished at your figures. I've had an air source heat pump put in place of an oil boiler in the last 12 months, and I don't recognise the sort of costs or indeed the pipework changes. I did have 2 radiators replaced out of 10, and one change to the pipework, which was a correction, but overall far less than you're saying. But my question to you is, what is the capital cost, the additional capital cost of putting in, I think you've started to talk about that, of putting in air source heat pump rather than the gas boilers, and what is the, at current prices, what is the householder over the likely 25 years of their mortgage, at current prices, how much are they going to save on their fuel bills by having the air source heat pump instead? And I also want to ask the officers how it was we can have started building the site out if we haven't agreed condition 41.
It's a pre-commencement condition 41, so they're in breach of the planning condition.
Thank you, councillor. I'll start with your personal experience. The big difference between retrofitting an air source heat pump to an existing house and building under the new building regulations, starting from scratch. So yes, I'm sure you didn't have to change all your pipe work. I'm sure you didn't change your hot water cylinder, maybe change some radiators, but we are working, you may tell me I'm wrong, but we're working to a different standard with new build houses compared to an existing house. So there will be a difference. I mean, in terms of capital costs, gas boilers are tried and tested technology. They may be polluting, but as you can imagine, the industry's got those pretty as efficient as they can get, and everyone who deals with plumbing and installation knows what they're doing. They're relatively cheap technology. Air source heat pumps are an emerging technology. They come with a cost because not too many are being made at the moment. They come with a cost because they're a different style of installation, and they come with a cost because they are relatively rare, and time will pass, they will become cheap, if not cheaper than gas boilers in due course. I can't give you the exact price of a gas boiler versus an air source heat pump, but they do cost more, and that's one of the reasons why Crest Nicholson want to change the second phase, so they know it's coming and they can prepare for it, they can be ready. In terms of the cost over the lifetime of the scheme, you are absolutely right. But I appreciate I'm talking to a committee with several Green councillors. It's no different to buying an electric car. You pay more up front in order to save putting petrol in the future. It's the same with an air source heat pump. You pay more now for an air source heat pump, and then you don't have a gas bill. So yes, over the lifetime of a home, there is a saving. I think, as the earlier question that I answered, is that I don't think customers are seeing that benefit. I don't think they understand that if they pay more now, they will save in the future.
Your second or third question? I mean, are you finished now, John?
Yeah.
For now?
Come back to what officers are going to say about the breach of condition, etc.
Perhaps I'll just let Brad research that in a minute, and just if I can pop back to the building control question, if that's all right, Chair. Super, thank you. So I've just been in discussion with the building control manager, and he's confirmed that usually once work starts, the regs are locked in. He said there are some caveats to that. Usually once work starts, the regs are locked in. Sometimes it's plot specific rather than site specific. So he has said there is some flex in that, but his starting point was usually once work starts, the regs are locked in.
My understanding it was on the individual building that. Okay.
Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you. It was just coming back to the point that you completely understand that swapping out one load of plumbing for another has a cost to you. I think you mentioned that if you install them from the start, then the cost of air source heat pumps versus gas is actually quite modest to a developer, the cost difference. But just from my understanding, it sounds like the phase one, the problem you've got is that you've started building them. If you weren't so far down the line, you could potentially choose to say, well, just for ease, we're going to make the whole lot air source heat pump. There'll be a modest cost uplift, but it won't be huge. It won't damage the viability of the site. But you've already half built phase one. So you would be looking at more expense. You would essentially be retrofitting your own homes. Is that why you're
Councillor,
kind of reluctant
you
to
are
do it?
correct. Phase one is underway. It's not by any means finished. The line has been drawn between phase one and phase two because that gives Crest Nicholson time to prepare for the change, order the materials, change the working drawings before they even order the materials, and get ready to go. I think the problem is that they've been building in accordance with Condition 40, expecting some people to come in and pay for the option to make the swap, and it's not the efficient way of doing it. That's the trouble. It's an expensive thing to do because it's a different set of working drawings essentially for the same house. So people aren't taking it up. We've talked about the cost. If it's possible to make the change, then we can change just over half the site by dealing with the second phase almost as a standalone scheme and delivering air source heat pumps on every single plot. It's simply not working by letting the customers choose. They're not interested.
That's a follow-up. I just wondered what percentage of phase one is under construction. Is there any room to have some of phase one being handled differently?
The honest answer is no. As you can imagine, the construction moves across the site like a wave. So you start with the roads and the drains under it, then you get to the foundations of the houses, then you get to the superstructure, the internal fit out and so on. You saw in the pictures that Mr. Heffer put on the screen, up to roof level on the houses at the front, which means the foundations have already gone across the site. All the pipes in the ground are in for most of phase one already.
Councillor Hardingham.
Spent some interesting minutes looking at the Crest Nicholson website, and I would like to quote a couple of phrases before I come to the question. Here is one: we are committed to mitigating our impact on the environment and reducing carbon emissions, and that refers to long-term legacy. We strive to reduce our impact on the environment by reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. We take proactive measures to safeguard the environment. Are these statements genuine commitments, or are they greenwash?
I'm glad you quoted that, Councillor, because I've come here today to try and talk the committee into having half the scheme with air source heat pumps. So that's definitely mitigating the impact. The whole thing could be gas boilers.
You have adopted science-based targets and you're working towards net zero on your carbon emissions. You state that 62% of Crest Nicholson's greenhouse gas emissions are due to the actual use of the houses once they're occupied. So in other words, it's a very large proportion of the greenhouse gas emissions which you are striving to reduce. So in that case, why are you not adopting the best possible technology at every point rather than reverting to the cheapest technology to build which is available to you?
I suspected you were going to go there, Councillor. The issue is that we build in accordance with the regulations as they stand. We do the best we can. This is a great example of a site where they've reviewed what they're doing and seen an opportunity to change it and do better. I understand why the committee added the condition a couple of years ago. I can see the point, but it's not really working out. Whereas Crest Nicholson reviewed their own scheme and found a way to deliver the second half. Essentially, it's zero carbon ready, isn't it? As long as the electricity is coming in from a sustainable source, the scheme itself creates no carbon apart from the residents driving their cars about. This is a great example of Crest Nicholson trying to do better. We could have easily not submitted anything to change the condition and sat back and smugly built out gas-fired boilers for all 258 homes, made more money, and created more carbon emissions. This is exactly what the things you've taken for the website say we're trying to do.
Thank you. Can I come back on that? Yep. Under the science-based targets, you state that a list of your current fabric and technology specifications. And you've said that retrofitting or changing the fit-out of the houses in phase 1 would require expensive changes to pipework and radiators and all the plumbing. Yep. Under your current fabric and technology specifications, there's a column here with current fabric and another one with potential fabric. Now, under the fabric and technology specifications which you're including now, number 8 states that you're installing larger radiators for optimal heating efficiency and pipes enlarged to future-proof for air source heat pumps. Now, is it the case that you are installing those items in the houses that you're currently building, or is the statement on the website untrue?
I must admit, I'm not familiar with that statement on the website, and I'm not sure that pipes work equally well for all types of air source heat pumps, let alone air source heat pumps versus boilers. I think that's quite a general statement of where they're intending to go, and not entirely applicable to this site. As you can imagine, building regulations doesn't allow optional elements no more than a planning application. Allows alternative schemes to be approved. Therefore, something has to be approved, and the scheme approved is the one which delivers the gas boilers and the PV panels. And we're looking to make a change to hit those targets that you're talking about.
Yeah, I've got a further question in relation to the PV panels. The gas boilers, I assume, which are being installed, which you wish to install, are condensing boilers that don't have a hot water tank. Is that correct?
Yes, they are. They're the ones that heat the hot water when you need it, rather than store it in a tank.
So you're installing solar panels on the houses, but you don't have a heat dump possibility for the electricity produced by the solar panels, because you don't have a hot water tank to put surplus electricity into. So, therefore, as I understand it, if I'm correct, surplus electricity generated during the day, which is when it is generated, and most houses will be empty, will actually be exported to the grid, thereby producing, at current rates, minimal benefit to the householder. Is that correct?
You are correct. Any electricity not used in the house is exported to the grid.
Yes, but You don't have battery storage.
There is no battery storage. One of the advantages of swapping to air source heat pumps is the pump is always running, and the solar panels will run the pump. That's why you have hot water storage with an air source heat pump, because it can't turn the cold air outside into hot water quick enough. You have to store it, whereas a condensing boiler can do so. This is a point I mentioned earlier, is gas boiler technology is in a way ahead of air source heat pump technology. We're going back to storing hot water in tanks at the moment.
Thank you. I think I've...
Councillor Lawrence.
I'm a bit concerned on your statements to say that under number 40 at the moment you've actually had no interest and from purchasers, which whether it's the price of difference or not would appear to be the case. If you've had no uptake on it, is the reason for wanting to remove number 40 because you now fear you will get people knocking on the door asking for its installation of air source heat pumps in the first phase at a time that you're now so far advanced, you've purchased all the materials to go into the properties because you're nearing final fit out. So you want to remove this danger to your operation that you will now have people coming forward. To me, if it's not causing you an issue now because nobody wants it, why are you bothering to remove it?
Asking to remove it because it's redundant. Condition 41 and the energy sustainability strategy takes a different approach to dealing with the site, and the NPPF requires that conditions that aren't needed aren't included in planning permissions. I'm more tidying up the planning permission to keep in accordance with national guidance than I am trying to hide from someone trying to add an air source heat pump in the future.
Councillor Warboys.
Thank you, Chair. Top of page 23 on our papers, and I believe this is a statement from you, that it's submitted to address condition 41, which would secure the implementation of a more effective form of energy and resource efficiency for the second half of the scheme. So, first, do you stand by that statement? And are we in agreement that air source pumps and photovoltaic cells are a more effective form of energy and resource efficiency?
Yes, Councillor, you are correct. I mentioned in my speech we're above 2/3, up to 3/4 more efficient compared to the current building regulations. The gas boilers aren't inefficient, but yes, I'm happy to admit that I think I said 32% against the 2013 regulations for the gas boilers, 75% for the air source heat pumps on the current regulations.
Right. So you're asking us to allow you to proceed with the development that will implement a less effective form of energy and resource efficiency?
No, Councillor, the current permission allows for a less efficient form of energy efficiency in that we're building in accordance with the current building regulations and the air source heat pumps are optional. We're proposing to make the second half of the scheme, air source heat pumps will be required. They'll be in the permission, we have to build in accordance with the permission, so very much the opposite.
Yes, I understand the building regulations and where they position you in terms of the development, but I think it's a question of your intention is to build a less effective form of energy and resource efficiency than you could do. So that's going to be the headline, isn't it?
Sorry, Councillor, I don't understand. The scheme is currently being built out. It's under construction in accordance with the current regulations. In fact, exceeding the current regulations.
Yes.
And we're asking to do better. Could you ask me the question in a different way, please?
Yes. The question is that you're asking us to take away the condition to allow people, if they wished, to have the most effective form of energy and resource efficiency for their home. That is what you're asking us to do.
Yes, the answer to your question is yes. We are asking to remove condition 40 in exchange for more than half the homes having air source heat pumps. So we're taking away the option and making it a permanent feature of the second half. So the scheme will be more efficient, assuming that we don't get a sudden rush of people wanting air source heat pumps in phase 1. And experience so far from the 6 months the homes have been on sale is nobody is interested. We can do much, much better if we remove condition 40 and implement the new scheme under condition 41.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Penny?
So just in black and white, would Crest Nicholson consider installing air source heat pumps across both phase 1 and phase 2, across 100% of the properties? Why wouldn't you?
No, Crest Nicholson will not consider that because the scheme's already been built. It's too late. We are offering, on the second half of the scheme, with a horizon where we can accommodate changes to the working drawings, changes to the building regulations, order the materials to do better. But the scheme is currently being built out in accordance with the current permission, including condition 40. That's the standard we're working to. We can't go back and retrofit homes that are already sold.
Councillor Matheson?
Yeah, but surely I mean, this condition 41 isn't actually a, you know, all it says at the moment is that there will be a strategy and that isn't in place. So really you're saying, well, it's too late, we're going ahead, we're building them as we've seen the pictures. But actually that's gone ahead in breach of condition 41 not being discharged. And condition 41, well, I know what it ought to say, and it will come to that later, but it's not there.
So I just come in and perhaps...
I agree that information has been submitted prior to commencement. The condition has not been discharged, despite being in place for, I mean, Mr Hefford had to tell us when the first submission went in. A second one is now in. This application is before you to change condition 40 to match condition 41. The process is being followed. It simply hasn't been signed off prior to commencement.
In truth, Councillor, I think the reason for the delay in discharging condition 41 was to see what the outcome of the condition or this particular planning application was. Because if you accepted the recommendation that we'd made, the text, in effect, the identification of the plots would be endorsed to be included in condition 41. So we would then be in a position to discharge condition 41. It is very regrettable that the development has commenced in advance of that.
Are there any more questions for the agent? Okay, we'll open the item for debate then.
Sorry, Madam Chair, just very brief. If we may just go back to some first principles with the help of my colleagues. So the original planning permission that was granted a year ago, over a year ago, is a full permission, obviously, looking at it. It is a full planning permission. So there's obviously, and if you look on the website, there's a lot of discharges, conditions granted. There was no need for reserved matters, obviously. And I think the committee has the applicant's point that as condition 40, which we're talking about today, is worded, there could in theory be 0 air source heat pumps or 258. Now, the condition requires the applicant, so if I may, with your permission, ask the agent how I'm just intrigued by the selling process, Mr. Smith. So if I come along to the site office and say I'm interested in a house, when can I reserve it and buy it? Does it have to be practically complete or near enough? How does that work?
At present, the homes are being sold what we call off-plan. So there's a brochure, it shows you the layout. This is the stage where the option, the word in the condition allows the option to be exercised to add the air source heat pump. So the air source heat pump is added at the point where you get in a contract to purchase the property. So you agree to pay extra on top to add the air source heat pump. So it's done before the home is built. There could be an issue towards the end of the scheme where houses have been built and not sold, but that's not what we're worrying about at this stage. The condition says it is something to be done at the point of sale. So very early on, when we set off plan, we can plan for these things in the same way that not Crest Nicholson but others do offer optional kitchen designs, that kind of thing. You can add more to the property before it's built.
If I so forgive me if I'm being a bit dense here, but I've never myself bought a house in this sort of situation. But if I come along and say, oh, that nice house plot number 300, plot number 58, that's not yet been bought by anyone else, can I have that? Will that already be built with or without an air source heat pump, or what will the state be with that? Or
the homes are released in phases,
yeah.
Or sub-phases, I should say. We've got phase 1 and phase 2 we see on the screen. So the homes are released in phases. So you can't just say, I'd like that plot way down the end of phase 2. They're released in groups in order to manage the build process. So the intention would always be to exchange contracts on a house before it's been completed. It's what in the industry we call a stock plot. What you don't want is a house which is finished and not occupied. What you'd like to do is sell them all up front, and that fits nicely with the condition in terms of you can add something at this point, and it's an easier process of adding the air source heat pump than going back and retrofitting it. But the wording in the condition allows for the sale up front. It doesn't suggest that you could retrofit it afterwards if the plot hasn't been sold.
So I'll open up the item for debate then. So who would like to start? Councillor Lawrence.
I see the guarantee of 54% of the homes being installed with heat pumps at the initial capital cost price of the property a great advantage, because that allows a mortgage to be issued on the full capital asset or borrowing. I see this optional extra in recommendation 40 could cause difficulty in getting financed through the mortgage, because you're adding costs which might, it's like adding curtains is an extra, which you wouldn't get under a mortgage. So I see the opportunity here to guarantee another 54% of the properties to have air source heat pumps, with the fantastic result improvement on carbon emissions are very positive, and I'll be supporting the recommendation. Thank you.
A proposal?
Yes, I'd like to make that a proposal, but it might be too early for a seconder.
Would you like to speak?
No, I wasn't wanting to say.
Anyway, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I asked at the outset that we needed to return to the intentions of the committee, which I was on, Councillor Warboys also. And my remembrance is quite clear that we said, look, you won't get all these houses built before June 2025, will you? Agreed, no, we won't. So therefore we had that understanding that would be phase 1 and phase 2, and phase 2 would be under the new future homes building regulations, which would give certainty that they would have air source heat pumps installed, all of them, in phase 2. And we then moved on to talk about, would you be prepared to have the option of air source heat pumps being offered to the public, the buyer, on the earlier phase? Because clearly that was what, in policy terms, that is what we wanted to see, that we maximised or minimised, let's say, the future CO2 emissions, and that the potential was there as far as we could take it to do that. Now, that is my clear understanding of what that. Now, if the condition, and there are two conditions here we're talking about really, there's condition 40, which is what we're looking at, and there is condition 41, which ought to have reflected that overall intention of the committee to deliver that strategy which would maximise the possibility of how many air source heat pumps there were, and therefore, as others have said, the most efficient system into the future. If the condition doesn't do what the committee, in my remembrance of it, wanted, then that is very disappointing and gives us a different debate that we're having. So I'd really ask officers to look at that, say which of these is the case, because this is not where I expected to be in terms of this site going forward.
Would you like to speak to that, Gemma?
I don't recollect whether I was at that committee, so I'm not sure I can add to that significantly. I've had a little look at the committee action sheet, and that does appear to reflect the condition as we've got. It asks for to require by condition that the first purchaser to be offered the option to purchase air source heat pump, and that details including noise assessment of such units to be agreed, PV content to remain as proposed. So that to me seems to reflect that condition. I don't know if
Was it for both phases or just the first one?
It doesn't mention anything about phases on there. Yeah, so I don't know if Brad's got any recollection, or if there's a particular question we could ask the developer about their intentions. That might shed some more light on that.
I think, Chair, because I presented the application to committee in the item at the time, and I do recall there was extensive, I think, debate about air source heat pumps and how that condition could be worded. I believe that the Chief Planning Officer drafted a condition whilst in the meeting and read it out, and I think that members were content with the wording of the condition that was suggested. I don't recall it was actually tweaked that much from what was read out, in all honesty. So I think what the condition says at condition 40 was what was considered appropriate at the time of the consideration of the planning application.
So, I think that leaves me looking again at the question of how building regulations apply, because that understanding, what I've just said about the intentions of the committee, that was based on that assumption that June 2025 they would apply, not that, oh well, we'll fix the whole lot at the outset, but we haven't actually really fixed it very firmly if we haven't agreed this condition 41 as well. So I'm I just don't think I'm in possession of enough certainty to support this recommendation.
Can I just ask in the meantime, is there anyone that will second the proposal that is currently on the table from Councillor Lawrence? You're happy to second it?
I think, yes, that we're not supporting this proposal. I too was at the original application.
Do you mean you want to second Councillor Lawrence's proposal? Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought Councillor Matheson was proposing.
No. Councillor Lawrence was proposing that we go with the officer's recommendation, and I started proposing it, and you said yes. So that's why I just want to clear that. That's a no then. Yeah.
Sorry.
Do you just want to speak, Councillor Penny?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it would seem that another possible course of action would be to amend the condition rather than remove it. We could choose to retain it for phase 1 of the development, but accept the developer's offer of installing 136 air source heat pumps in phase 2. And we could do that. I don't know what others might think.
Councillor Lawrence?
I think the reality check here is that nobody's taken up the option, so however we tweak words in changing conditions, it's still not going to change the fact that people at the moment don't want to pay the extra premium to take up the option. If we look at the phase 2 phase, where it's incorporated in the price and the builder's got cheaper overheads, he can work out what his figures are going to be, then you've got 54% of the homes installed with heat pumps. I think we should just forget about phase 1 now, because it's not practical, it's not working, and the public don't want it at that price. The later that phase 1 continues on, that £20,000 we've already heard could double, because the extra costs involved on the lesser properties. We've got to do a reality check. Thank you.
Thank you. For what it's worth, I'm just going to have my say before I let you speak, Councillor Hardingham. I completely agree with Councillor Lawrence. I feel that if it wasn't, I wasn't there at the original meeting, and I feel if it wasn't sort of split then into the 2 phases, and I hear what you're saying, John, about your understanding was that phase 2 would be under a different set of regulations, and but I feel that as more than if the whole thing was looked at, that that everyone had an option, but they're basically saying the second phase will all have air source heat pumps, then I think that is a reasonable offer to give some sort of certainty that air source heat pumps will be on this site. I think if they could go ahead and build the whole lot with gas, if no one took up the option, then actually having half of them under certainty that half of them would be, well, over half of them would be air source heat pumps, then I think that is a good offer on the table. Councillor Hardingham, would you like to speak?
Go back to, thank you, the statement on the website about current fabric and technology specifications which are being used by Crest Nicholson, and their statement that larger radiators for optimal heating efficiency and pipes enlarged to future-proof houses for air source heat pumps is their current fabric technology. Now, the agent has told us that actually to retrofit a house that they're building out for a gas boiler involves changing the plumbing. So either this statement is frankly hogwash, or we ought to be able to insist that they build any houses in phase 1 so that they are properly designed for retrofitting if that becomes necessary. That's my comment.
Okay, Councillor Penny, were you next?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's possible that we might have to end up with Councillor Lawrence's proposal, but I think we should explore all other options to maximise what can be done here. Because we want our planet to be future-proofed, not just a few houses.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's really frustrating. I mean, it's sort of, we are where we are, but I just wanted to push back on a couple of things that the agent said a number of times, that people are not interested, but they're not interested because they're being charged £20,000 for something which I think, as you stated, doesn't actually cost you. It costs a little more, but not that much more if you build it in at the start. So it's very frustrating, really, that people are being put off by cost when they perhaps needn't have been if you'd, as Councillor Hardingham said, were putting things in place that would have made it an easier option to install and not have to pass all that cost on to your consumers. I think you also mentioned a couple of times air source heat pumps were sort of rare, unusual technology, little used, untested. I mean, I know we've had decades of gas boilers, but air source heat pumps are going to be required on all new homes from halfway through next year or the end of next year. So I think sort of portraying them as this sort of, quirky, unusual thing is a little bit, I can't think of the right word. So yeah, it didn't seem quite right. I think somebody else has said the planning regs are a minimum, so it would have been lovely to have had those homes in phase 1 built in such a way that they were easy to retrofit, perhaps, but I don't know. I mean, I'm still thinking about it all, but it is frustrating.
Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Hardingham?
Well, is it the case that the developer is saying that if we do not lift condition 40, they're absolutely going to refuse to install anything but gas boilers on phase 2? I mean, it seems like an ultimatum to me. Is that the situation we're in?
Is that right, Gemma? I mean, surely that if we don't do this, that they will just still have to offer it as a, you know, as an option, as it stands.
That's what it sounds like to me, but perhaps if you were happy to ask that again to the applicant, they might confirm.
So is your question basically, if it stands, it stands, and if no one actually takes up the option, then everyone could, I mean, that is the case, that everyone can choose to go gas and there'll be nothing built there? Or are you sort of saying, is it a threat that they then will take off the option?
Well, it seems to be we're still uncertain as to whether phase 2 would be subject to future homes standards or not. If we don't know that, I don't see how we can take a decision on this at the moment.
Okay, what do I do?
Just say we're going to have a break.
So we'll have a 5-minute break to give these guys some time to talk. So it's now 11 o'clock, so shall we say 11:07? So Gemma, have you got some news?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just had a look at various issues at hand, had a conversation with the developer about some of their aspects, and they are just trying to see if they've got any confirmation on their exact building regs, so we have got that update. From our side, it wasn't a local authority building regs that they've used, so we don't hold that record, so hence asking that question. If we get an update, that'll be helpful, but we don't know if we've got that information at the minute. However, what I would say is what we're looking at is, at the moment, we don't have that future home standard in place. There is normally a 12-month run-in. We haven't got any news on that 12-month run-in. So whatever the future homes may or may not be is in the future, and we can't essentially rely on it absolutely at the moment. Even if they have not got their Part 2 building regs in place, there's no certainty on that at the moment. So what we are being offered is certainty that whatever happens for future homes, we would get air source heat pumps on that 56%. And the sacrifice would be that we no longer offer it to people on the first phase. So that's sort of one position. If they have got future homes building regs and they need to do that, yes, essentially we are no better off. We're still not offering it to people on that first phase. But I think Councillor Lawrence probably hit the nail on the head as far as the monetary position. If you are buying your house for however many thousands of pounds, that's the market value of the house. If you choose to add in your air source heat pump at £20,000, you can't get a mortgage against that bit. It's not part of the value of the property. So have you got £20,000 spare when you're buying a house is a big question. I think we asked Crest Nicholson, their advice was that nearly all people who are buying houses on that site are buying it with a mortgage. You're not buying it with enough money to buy a house outright, and 20 grand, you know, I can afford that. So you are looking at that kind of scenario. So I think the advice we're saying is the choice of you do lose it on some, but you gain certainty on others while we're waiting future home standards is the benefit there. Does that cover everything? I might just let you in.
Yeah, I think that I agree. I mean, I think one point to make is, agree with everything Jem has said. The justification, I'm not advocating for the applicant here, just explaining how I see the basis legally of their position, that if we left condition 40, well, the background is we've got condition 41, which we're not talking about expressly today in this application, but it's there is a sustainability strategy that is submitted and, if you like, waiting for sign-off in a discharge of condition, which is very important because it's that is what will, as I understand it, if it's approved and if its development proceeds on that basis, it will deliver the, was it 54? Sorry, I thought it was 54% was the updated. Is that right? Yeah, 54% of dwellings with air source heat pumps on the whole of the development. Have I got that right? 54% of 258. Yeah, I've got that right. Good. So if that is at the back of our minds, I think, looking at it as a lawyer, if condition 40 was left in its place, there'd be a kind of internal inconsistency in the planning permission, because it would, instead of saying there will be 54% not paid for by the buyer, provided in the development as a whole, and then another condition saying everybody can have one as long as they pay for it if they at the initial purchase stage. I think there is an untidiness that would be left there that would make me a bit unhappy as a lawyer. So I see the point of the application, and I think it's perhaps it would I think that's a point just worth making.
So our options are to go with Councillor Lawrence's proposal, which I'm happy to second, and we, you know, it could be approved, or we go back to what's basically already here, and it's anyone's guess. They'll just have an option, and who knows who will take it up or not in the future for the whole site.
With the building regs question on top, Chair, of if future homes come in, they may have to, but at the moment, yeah, we haven't got that 12-month trigger to say future homes will come in next year and they will have to. So I think it's that certainty that we can say we've definitely got that secured over and above, even if building regs haven't been secured for phase 2, which we haven't got that certainty on. Even if they haven't been secured and they were to come in, they could realistically come in before future homes, so that would avoid the future home standards. They could future homes and haven't got a 12-month trigger on them. There's not a go on those, and presumably won't be for at least the time up until Parliament is back in position, and that would delay it further and reopen that window. So what we're doing is securing a certainty, even if we're saying that they should do that under future building regs anyway. We're getting that certainty now today.
So do you think we should go to a vote and then possibly come back to debate if it doesn't go through, or do you think we should debate now, or as we've got
We have a resolution on the table which has been proposed and seconded. So unless you and Councillor Lawrence decide to withdraw it, Madam Chair, we must vote on it and go next. But
okay.
May I ask the developer a question at this point?
I don't see why not, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Thank you. Well, I would like to come back to this question of future-proofing, which is the statement on your website. I've got it print out here. You state, in black and white, larger radiators, ... to future-proof for air source heat pumps. Now, you've said in your statement that retrofitting or changing over to air source heat pumps instead of fitting gas boilers involves a change in radiators and pipework, which is at odds with the statement on your website. Now, can you guarantee that in phase one, assuming that we were to go with the proposal, for instance, that you would nevertheless make sure that the pipework and radiators you install in the houses with gas-fired boilers would be suitable for air source heat pumps in the future, because undoubtedly when the current boilers that are being installed run out, wear out, the homeowners will have to install air source heat pumps at that point. Obviously quite unnecessary to go to the cost of changing pipework and all that sort of thing. So can you guarantee that pipework and radiators will be suitable for retrofitting with air source heat pumps?
Chair, if I may respond. I'm not sufficiently in control of the technical process to give you the assurance you're after, Councillor. What I can tell you is that the boiler is on the inside of the house and the air source heat pump is on the outside of the house. So we've definitely got to change the pipe work. The radiators, I'm not so sure. That isn't a very broad statement which doesn't apply to every single house on the site at Stowmarket. I think there are probably certain houses where everything works just fine if you swap. I'm pretty sure, particularly the smaller houses, that it's going to take a bit more work than just swapping an air source heat pump for a boiler. It's regrettable. The wording is as vague as it is on the website, but I've come here today to give you as many facts as I can. We've submitted an application to tidy up Condition 40 in conjunction with Condition 41. And yes, when you change anything in your house in the future, there's going to be a certain amount of retrofitting. I can't sit here and answer your question and honestly say yes or no to either side of it.
As I expected, a thoroughly unsatisfactory answer.
Councillor Warboys?
Yes, I thank Gemma for the clarification, and we're faced with a very pragmatic choice as to whether to accept certainty and to go against a previous condition that was the best we could achieve at the time. We were concerned about people making a lifetime choice in their property, and to get the best possible solution for them in terms of heating. We didn't at the time consider the complications of getting a mortgage and then having to pay an optional £20,000 according to the figures given by the developer, the agent. I disagree completely that it's new technology. We're somewhat behind as a country in installing heat pumps, but if you go over to Scandinavia, Norway in particular, fitting a heat pump is the norm, despite the fact that they've got huge reserves of gas themselves. It's a difficult one. I would have liked to have put forward that the agent would consider the gain in actually marketing his houses and saying that this saves incredibly on its carbon footprint and it is future-proof. You know, when it comes to replacing your boiler, you'll be replacing a heat pump, and it will just be a case of changing it over. Changing over from a gas boiler to a heat pump does incur excessive costs because you have to change the radiators, the plumbing, and there's all sorts of other expenses. If you go onto Octopus Energy, put in a heat pump in, say, on their tariff would save £220 a month. So I can't understand why it's not possible to market this as a huge benefit. It would be, it's a shame, I think, that we're having to sort of deprive future owners of these properties the chance to sort of future-proof their homes. But it is a very pragmatic choice, and as Gemma said, it is certainty that we will get the most efficient sources of heat in future houses. You know, it's up to the developer really if they are comfortable with that kind of marketing that's saying that these are gas boilers, that the cheapest you can do at the moment, but in future we'll be selling houses that are much more heat efficient. We do have developers coming forward who are producing houses and homes that are well above building regulations. Building regulations are a minimum requirement. There is some uncertainty about future homes. As Gemma pointed out, we don't know exactly what they're going to be. So we're faced with this very pragmatic choice. That I'd like to hear how other people are moving. I'm not going as far as to say that I completely support it at the moment. I think I need a bit more persuasion that that is the best possible outcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, I'm grateful to Councillor Warboys for expressing much more eloquently than I can much of how I feel about this. I do find it extraordinary, the idea that the mortgage company would not loan against an air source heat pump. It's not as if I've ever in the past tried to apply for a mortgage and they've said, well, we can't loan against your gas central heating. That's an extra. Never. No. Well, if that's a fact, it seems an extraordinarily odd fact. And if air source heat pumps are being singled out in that way as different somehow to other heating systems, less efficient and fossil fuel central heating systems can be mortgaged against, that's all quite bizarre, frankly. Doesn't actually make any kind of sense at all. Apart from that, I just, you know, it's such a mess. I can't support. I'm not going to support or vote against. I don't think. We just haven't actually delivered what the committee intended 18, 15, whatever it is, months ago. And, you know, so, you know, as a member of that committee and this committee, I'm not happy at all. you know, this isn't the best we can get. It's the least bad we can get, frankly. Let's call it what it is.
I'm asking the area manager, governance officer to conduct the electric vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote's now in progress. Oh,
Sorry.
Apologies. Can I just ask if you're voting on the recommendation as in the agenda, that I could add that you would agree and note that the specific plots that are identified in the text in my report, pages 22 and 23, a request, or the committee requests that those identified plots are built into the sustainability strategy for condition 41 discharge. So it makes it absolutely clear it's a requirement of committee.
Yeah, so that would give us absolute certainty. So we're allowing this condition to go on the basis that we are securing it absolutely through that condition, and that we've got that detail in, so we can presumably move fairly shortly to approve that condition, and then it's there in writing, both as a note on the permission and in our action sheets, that is specific and out there. What I'll do at the minute is I'll put a note that it says plots identified are built into that, and then Brad and I'll make sure we add the plot numbers into my committee action sheet afterwards, so that when it comes around to you, you'll be absolute, we've got those plots specifically, must be air source heat pumps. Sorry, Brad, dealt with by that condition in that way, so that would give us that control.
thank you. So that amendment has been made to the vote, and the vote is now in progress. Thank you, members. Chair, that's 5 votes for, 1 against and 2 abstentions. Therefore, that's carried. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is 7B, DC/24/00573, Gipping Valley Bowls Club, Mason Sports Field, Bramford Road, Great Blakenham, Suffolk. I now invite the case officer, Nikita Mossman, to introduce the application to the committee. Sorry, Nikita, take your time.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. This is application DC/24/00573 at Gipping Valley Bowls Club on Bramford Road in Great Blakenham, and the proposal is for the erection of a bowls pavilion following the demolition of an existing porter cabin. The application is being brought to committee because the site is on council-owned land. Here is the site location plan, with the blue outlining the whole area of the bowls club and the red outlining where the existing porter cabin is and the new pavilion is proposed. This is an aerial view showing that there is hedging and trees surrounding the site to separate it from the sports playing fields to the north, and it also shows the other buildings situated within the site and around it. Here is a wider view showing the housing estate to the east of the site, with the B1113 running in between. This is the constraints map showing that there are no listed buildings on the site nor any nearby, and that there is a footpath running along the south of the site. There is also a risk of surface water flooding within the bowls green itself and along the highway. This is the site layout showing the distance of the proposed pavilion to the boundaries of the site, which is 16 metres from the eastern boundary and 9 metres from the southern boundary. Here are the existing plans of the porter cabin on the site, which is of a flat roof construction, and the dimensions measure at 14.7 metres in length and 3.7 metres in width. These are the proposed elevations of the pavilion, showing a pitched roof construction and a veranda to the front elevation. This is the proposed floor plan, which shows that the pavilion would include internal and external storage space, a club room area, a hot beverages area, and a water closet. On to site photos. This is a picture of the existing porter cabin on the site. And this is a closer view, showing that there is a veranda that they've added onto the porter cabin in situ. This is a view of the eastern boundary, which shows the sheds on the site used in association with the Bowls Club. This is the western boundary, showing the mature hedging around the site, as well as the netting which surrounds the sports fields. This is a view further west towards the northern boundary, which again shows mature hedging surrounding the site. This is another view of the northern boundary as we move towards the east. This is a view of the southern boundary when standing to the east of the site, and this is also a view of where the pavilion is proposed to be located in replacement of the porter cabin. This is the access. This is a picture facing west when coming in from the access onto the site. This is an area between the access, which is behind the green gate, and the site in between the access, which is behind the green gate, and the site, which is behind the hedging. And this is also the same area, but facing east. To conclude, there have been no objections received from consultees or representations, and the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to conditions as set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikita. Are there any questions from members to the case officer? Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, I was just wondering what those adjacent buildings were that you could see. I think it was slide 16 and so on, just so we know what we've got nearby. Yeah, that's it. What's that over the hedge?
This building here, that's also used as part of the Bowls Club, so I guess for storage and stuff like that. I'm not 100% sure, but I know it's for the Bowls Club.
Oh, I see. So it's just some other recreational. Okay, thank
That's
you.
the one.
Are there any other questions? Okay, we will. We haven't got any public speakers to address the committee. There's no one from the parish council or objectors or supporters or the agent, but I have got a statement here from the ward member Adrienne Marriott, which I shall read out. I'm in favour of this approval. The Bowls Club is a little gem which should be more widely available to residents of Great Blakenham and nearby villages. I provided the Bowls Club with some of my locality funding which cover the purchase of ditch protectors which help ensure appropriate safety margins and run-off areas on the green as required by the Sports Council. On a later visit, I was warmly welcomed and given a chance to try out bowling under the guidance of Michael Roberts. A match was in progress against a visiting team and there was a convivial atmosphere. The proposed new building will give increased floor space from 14 times 4 metres to 21 times 7.8 metres. The timber construction on a concrete framework will be much superior to the original porter cabin and will benefit from 2 toilets, a kitchen and a storeroom. Its design was chosen to be in keeping with the sports field. Michael tells me that the club has operated for over 40 years and whilst numerous repairs have been carried out, the structure is no longer viable. A new building was needed, but it was felt that a larger building would serve the club better and offer opportunities to local clubs and communities and craft groups as well as the general public. There would be more space for existing users such as the local sewing group. They also like to provide facilities for birthday parties for local children from the flats and houses on Masons Drive. Lunch clubs have been run in the past and the bowling club would like to reinstate these. Currently the club entertain visiting bowls players with tea and biscuits and sandwiches and light meals for those teams who require them. It is hoped that the visitors would greatly enjoy the new facilities and benefit from the greater room. Separately from the new building, there are 2 adjacent toilets which the club hope to convert into disabled facilities in another planning application. So that is from Adrienne. As we've got no one else to question, I propose we move straight to debate. So who would like to start off? Anyone? Go for it, Mr. John Masson, Councillor Masson.
Go on. Well, I mean, this is only in front of us because the district council owns the land, and it's entirely sensible improvement, and I would propose that we grant it as asked.
May I have a seconder? Councillor Davis? Excellent. Would anyone else like to speak to it? Cool. We can go straight to a vote then, and I'll ask the governance officer to do that.
Thank you, Chair. That now is in progress. Thank you, members. Chair, that's 8 votes for. That's carried. Thank you.
Lovely. So agenda item 8, site inspections.
None received.
Cool. The next meeting of the Mid Suffolk Planning Committee will be on Wednesday, the 19th of June.
Chair.
Sorry.
Are we not confirming that we've got a site visit arranged already?
This item agenda is for any site visit requests received to be
requests.
reported today.
Well.
Thank you.
It's useful perhaps to remind the committee that there is an arranged site visit which has been arranged before today.
Yes. Thank you.
So the next meeting of the Mid Suffolk Planning Committee will be on Wednesday, the 19th of June, 9:30 in the King Edmund Chamber. I now declare this meeting time closed at 11:39. Not bad.